think it is common that your generation thinks life is all about vocation, that who you are is what you do?
Yes, I think so. And I think that is who you are is what you do has been taught to them subtly.
By our generation?
I don't know. I mean, the books that are out there right now talking about purpose and fulfillment are primarily pointing to what were you uniquely designed to do? And I wouldn't disagree that we all have unique contributions that God has called us to make, but the way that we have primarily been taught to think about our purpose has been, what am I called to do? What specific, unique contribution can I make to the world? And I think there's a danger in that because as soon as my purpose is tied to that specific set of activities, that vocation, or it might be bigger than even a job. It might be a unique wiring or skill set, part of a side hustle that we have, an expression of something we do in the church context. As soon as that's my meaning and my purpose in life, I have to do that to be okay. As soon as that is stripped from me, I lose my sense of meaning, identity, and purpose. And I think that's the problem with it, is we become enslaved to that type of work. We need it to be okay, versus being able to freely do what God's called us to do.
So can we disentangle purposeful, meaningful work and identity? Are those two separate concepts, or do they mesh in some way?
I think they are different concepts. I think that our identity is meant to be found in the person of God as primarily a recipient of things he has for us, that he tells us that to be great in the kingdom, Jesus pulls a child to his lap and says, this is what it means to be great. He gives us this perfect picture of a person who is fine to be a recipient. Kids are fine to go, I only need things, and I'm fine to embrace that disposition. I have no shame about it. And so I think even posturing ourselves as children of God, recipients of what he has for us, just being the needy, dependent one in the relationship is where we find our healthiest identity. When that's healthy, I'm now free to do the work God has set before me. We are called, like Ephesians 2 says, we were created in Christ Jesus for good works that God has prepared beforehand so that we might walk in them. But I'm free to walk in all the different kinds of good works he's put before me because my identity isn't tied to them. I feel uniquely gifted as a writer, and I think that's okay to admit. But writing is not the only good work God has set in front of me. He also sets neighbors in front of me to reach out to and care for. And he sets prayer before me to do. And he sets little children for me to care for and friends to reach out to. And I don't maybe love all of those types of works in the same way, but my identity being rooted in God, not in my work, frees me to now do all the good work set before me, despite how they're connected to my unique skill set. And so I think the healthy identity being separate from work actually motivates more good works because we're free from needing them to be okay.
So what happens when we put too much weight in something that we may love doing and something where we see God's blessing in what we're doing, but how does that get unhealthy in our lives?
I think the first way that it gets unhealthy is we now are using the work to meet needs in ourselves. That if I need this work to be okay, to find identity and meaning, if it's what gives me value, it gives me a sense of a reason to get up in the morning, I'm actually doing this work for myself. I am motivated by needs within my own heart. And that has all sorts of distortions that can show up there. It can allow us to make compromises, unhealthy ones, to continue to do the work. It allows us to justify being unhealthy in our relationship with God or with our family, in our marriages or in parenting relationships, because this work is what I need to be okay. And so I make and justify compromises in my life because I'm so driven by this thing that maybe I've told myself is good for other people, and maybe in some degree it is. But when I need it to be okay, I make compromises, and I now am enslaved to it. I can't say no to it.
Can you testify on this, sister?
I can, yes. And I know very few people who don't relate to this, but in earlier seasons of my life, especially when my husband was in a very public ministry that I was alongside of, he was on stages, doing concerts, leading worship, and I didn't have the same outlets, but I had a desire for them, and I even had a unique sense of, I want to disciple people, I want to do ministry. And I found meaning in that. That was what I was chasing to find a sense of purpose in my life. And so what happened is that work became my master. I became enslaved to it. So anytime a ministry opportunity came up for me, I'm going to bend over backward to make sure I can do that. Even if it's unhealthy, it compromises me, I'm now doing that at expense of health, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I need this to be okay, to remind me that I have a purpose in life, in this ministry, so I'm going to do this. And it caused conflict in our marriage, and there were compromises that I made in my relationship with God, that I was eager to do ministry but not to meet with Him. And that's a problem that came from my identity and my purpose are rooted in an activity that I feel called to do, God may have for me, but it is not what is my purpose in life. I was made for God and for His glory, to know Him, be known by Him. And when that's not right, that work becomes a taskmaster, a slave master that I quickly and easily bend to because I need it to be okay.
Seems like the internet and social media have created almost it is essential that I be seen and that I have a public persona, or else I don't exist.
Yes.
You think that's right?
Absolutely. I think the desire to be seen, I think, is a human desire that is natural, normal. So that, first of all, to just validate that, I think we are meant to be seen. Genesis, before the fall, God creates man and woman. It says He saw it. He saw them, and it was good. To be under the watchful eye of someone is natural. Our children do that. Mom, watch me. Look at me. See what I did. And we don't see that in a child and think anything is wrong with that, but we are meant to be seen by God. But what social media has given us access to is we don't have to look to God for that anymore. We can look to each other, and that is a quick fix. And it's very attractive. We can get immediate measurable results back on how many people have seen us, what they think about their seeing of us. And so it gives us this immediate feedback response to that need that we chase, but again, will always leave us wanting for more. And we're seeing other people, and we are seeing their lives. And so there's a comparative element there that wasn't there in previous generations, that I can not only know what my next door neighbors are doing because I see them, I can now know what every human being in my life who I've ever met before is doing. And it's overwhelming. And we feel the same drive to go, I have to put myself out there and be seen as well. And not only that, I have to put myself out there in such a way that I can compete with what else is already out there and vie for the attention of others. But again, we were meant to be seen, but not primarily by each other. That's why Jesus says, don't do your good works to be seen by others. But He says, rather, go into your closet to pray, where your Father in heaven sees you. Jesus gives us God as an audience for us over and over again to remember in our doing, in our activity. It's just a misplaced desire for visibility, I think.
When we think about it in terms of vocational activity and vocational, what I do in the workplace, in the marketplace, is who I am, and therefore advancement and recognition and honor and achievement, they either come and I'm valuable, or they don't come and I'm not. Just talk about how that plays in the hearts of people who are trying to figure out who they are in this culture.
Yeah. We do live in a culture that's very achievement and accomplishment driven, that values that. We're Americans. We value pulling ourselves up, accomplishing things, the self-made person. So it is the value system that's been set before us. And so I think in some measure we're all going to be attracted to trying to meet that standard. The problem is that not everybody can chase that. That there is an entire community of people who are disabled, who are mentally handicapped, or you think about the rest of the world, that there are people in places in the world that don't have upward mobility options like we have. And so if it can't be true universally, then it is not a truth. If achievement and accomplishment are something that we need to be okay, then we have excluded a large population of people around the world who will never be able to do that. And that's my first problem with that as a way of seeing the world, that's a privileged position to be in, to say what I accomplish will give me value. There's a lot of people who can't accomplish anything in that sense.
Right.
But it also makes our value and our worth very flimsy and very vulnerable. That I need that affirmation, I need that constant sense of climbing and moving up to be okay in my life. So what happens when illness and sickness comes in, or an aging parent that you now need to step into a caregiver role and give up something else that you love, or your child, you have a child born with a disability, or just these things that happen that God allows to happen, come into my life and inhibit me from chasing achievement. Now I'm faced with a dire situation. If accomplishment and achievement give me value and worth, then these circumstances God has allowed have now stripped me of that ability. And that's a terrifying reality, because we need to know that we're valued. But that value cannot be attached to what I accomplish and what I achieve. It has to be found in a person and in relationship with God. And when it is, I'm now free to magnify God in whatever circumstance He has given me. I think of a dear friend and mentor of ours who's been a great mentor of ours, a discipler of us, has taught me and my husband just some of our most treasured tools for Bible study. He's a fabulous preacher. And for now 8 years, he has been diagnosed with MS. And all of his capacity for teaching, even for mentorship, at the limits he has in even human interaction, he can only handle so much conversation, is now wheelchair bound. And we have seen him be stripped of a type of giftedness externally. And yet, as that stripping has happened, the texts and the conversations that happen between him and us are things like him saying, I am the Lord's, and I belong to Him. And whatever He wants to do with me, I am happy to be His. That is screams such a beautiful message and a contrary message to this culture of achievement, to say, my value is found in a person, and He has purchased me by His blood. And if He would so choose to strip me of these things, then so be it, because my value is in Him. And that's actually a really safe place to be. It's really freeing to know that if I'm ever stripped of my ability to do, I will be okay. It makes me safer in the world. I don't need that accomplishment, that approval. I don't need to continue to climb to be okay. I have my value squarely set in a person, and it frees me, sets me free.
Some who are listening have come to an age where you start to peel off vocation, or where the kids leave home and what's been your vocation as a mom, that's not. I remember talking to empty nest moms who said, I got fired from my job when my last kid went to college, and I wasn't sure who I was anymore.
Yeah.
How do we prepare our own hearts for that moment when we will have diminished ability? All of us will.
Yes.
And not losing a sense of our own worth when that starts to happen.
Well, I think that we can prepare for that now. I think we can prepare for those coming transitions we will all face, from being very busy, active doers in life to those activities being stripped away, whether by life seasons changing or by health changing or just by age. We can prepare for that in the middle of our activity by reminding our hearts, this is not who I am. I am not a writer. I am not a speaker. I am not a mom. That's not my identity. I am God's, and I have these roles right now. I have these temporary vocations, and to ask God to pray our hands open from them. And my prayer life sounds like that now. Even at being at a conference like this, being in a moment like this, doing an interview, to go, this is wonderful, God, that I can do this right now. But I can do this because you've given me a voice to speak. You've given me a mind that can handle the capacity to research and write. And you may strip those from me one day. And when you do, I'm still yours. And I want to know now that that is who I am, that is my life, that is what gives me meaning. Would you help me, God, know that right now? Would you keep my hands open to my activities and what you would set before me? Make me a free agent of yours, that I am not driven by, I need to do these particular things, but I am driven by you. God, what do you want for me? And if that's to strip me of things, give me a yes in my heart. But I think it does start with preparing our hearts right now, rather than waiting till when that is forced upon us by life. And then we just have that moment of freaking out. What am I going to do? I've lost everything that matters in my life. We haven't. But it sometimes can catch us off guard because we're just so used to associating who I am is what I do. Who I am is how I'm wired. And my unique skill set is what I was made for. And to teach my heart, no, God says, I've created you for my glory. Nothing else will satisfy but the very glory of God. No great work in the world is enough to scratch the itch of that deep longing for transcendent meaning than knowing him. And fighting for that in relationship with God now, I think, keeps us free and prepared for those transitions that will come so that they don't throw us off.
We're talking to a lot of people right now who are headed to their job, and they look at their job and they think, I'm not contributing to anything. I work at the hardware store. I answer phones at the insurance agency. They just look and go, there's no sense of personal meaning or fulfillment in what they do. And they think, I wish I could be Kelly Needham and write books about Jesus and talk about that. And she has meaning and purpose in her life, and I just work at the hardware store.
Well, I would say, I don't know one human being in the world who doesn't have things in their life that they have to do that feel pointless. Who doesn't have laundry that they have to fold and dishes that they have to do that repeat every day? Where are the socks? Why don't they match? Why is there dust again in this place? I have to dust this thing again. I have to sweep the porch again. My plants died because I didn't water them. Whatever the thing is that feels like pointless and meaningless, why am I doing this? I think everybody, even the most glamorous lives in the world behind closed doors, have those things, and we need to know what to do with them. If what we do gives us meaning, then all those mundane things are devoid of meaning because they don't have any sense of movement, achievement, accomplishment, and they don't use any of our unique skill sets. Anyone with 2 arms can fold laundry. So what does that say about me that that's most of my job right now? Or that I check people out at a hardware store, or that I answer phone calls? Anyone with a mouth and an ear can do that. So it feels devoid of meaning. But then if we look at how God teaches us to treat our activities in the New Testament, in light of the gospel, in light of the best and biggest, most important news of the world, you see the New Testament authors look at their audience and say things like this: whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it for the glory of God.
Even folding laundry.
Even folding laundry. If eating and drinking is in that list, then surely folding laundry is, because eating and drinking is even less impressive than folding laundry. Who of us is not getting snacks in the middle of the day from the pantry? It's like, okay, if that is something I'm supposed to do for the glory of God, then I'm also supposed to change my toddler's diaper. I'm supposed to answer that phone call. I'm supposed to write that email back or manage that calendar. Whatever the thing is, whether it uses our unique skill set or not, if God has set it before us today to do, then he also looks at it and says, don't do it for the watchful eyes of somebody else. Don't do it for even your sense of meaning. Do it for my glory, and work hard at it for my glory. That we are called to have a different audience and a different aim behind our work than even our own sense of meaning and purpose. That those things become now an offering of worship to God. And he has seen fit to say, that's enough for me. That even if I can't perceive anything meaningfully has changed in the world because I chose to eat my lunch to his glory. I chose to fold laundry to his glory. I chose to sweep the back porch for his glory. If no one else sees it, if it doesn't seem to accomplish anything measurable at all, if it doesn't seem to have any type of impact whatsoever in the world, if none of that has happened, but I have done it unto God who sees in heaven, where there's also, we're told, a watchful audience of heavenly beings and saints before us, then, Lord, let that be enough for me. It's enough for you. Teach me to let it be okay and be enough for me, and know that it pleases you. And again, if God, the person of God, is where I find meaning and fulfillment, then his pleasure becomes a higher measuring stick of accomplishment than even what is visibly produced on this earth. And I think that's why I love stories like Mary pouring all of her oil on Jesus, that the disciples say, why this waste? They see something that could have been utilized in a much more effective way, much more impactful way. It could have been sold and used for the poor, and look at the ways you could have utilized this thing. You just wasted all this energy on Jesus. And Jesus rebukes them and says, no, it is good that she has done this. And so much so that wherever the gospel goes, this will be told of her, that Jesus takes a moment to say, she understands that the right value system is one that sees me honored and me pleased as the highest value. And that is, again, that's so freeing, because now if I have boring work set before me today that I don't like, I can choose to do it for the glory of God and know that that's actually accomplishing far more than even if I had a really unique job with really specific activities that fit specifically to me and seem to accomplish a lot. I don't have that, but I have this. And God says that this is a more significant eternal value to work for his glory, even when no one sees it, than if I had the best, coolest job in the world.
What was the central message you wanted to make sure your readers would get from your new book?
My hope from this book is to communicate that you were not made for verbs, but for a noun. That you were not made for doing. You were made for a person. That you were made in his image, that your very existence is tied to his. And that you were made to know him. That just to know the person of God will actually satisfy the deep ache for transcendent meaning that we have. And that can be really hard to believe, because we can't see God with our eyes and we can't hear him with our ears right now. But nothing else will do it. Nothing else will scratch that itch. And my hope is to convince readers that that is true, that God and God alone, knowing him and knowing him alone, will be the only thing that will give you a deep sense of purpose and meaning, which you need to live. You need a purposeful life, but it has to be detached from doing. It has to be attached to a person.